there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. Today I want to show you just a DIY way that you can create your own wreath and your own templates and everything like that, and this is a very quick and simple way, which is how I like my card making. Now first of all, I want to create a large octagon shape to be my base template, and this is going to be far bigger than what I could die cut because I just have a regular big shot size machine which just takes 6 inches across, and I have got 2 squares here. Now I think these measure 7 by 7 inches each, and I just put one on top of the other, and you can see exactly how they are, how you kind of need to set them up so that I can create that perfect octagon. Now I'm using the grid behind me to line them up and make sure it's even, and in a second here I'll show you that all 4 of those points are kind of lined up on those lines, so I know exactly where to do it. I don't do any measuring other than this. This is kind of as good as it gets for me, but as I said, I just need to make sure that all 4 of those points on the top square are right on those lines, and that will tell me is pretty much as I need that they are all lined up. So I'm just making sure that I have the right amount of squares between everything and everything is exactly in place. See the top there, and to the left and to the right, and then at the bottom they are all perfectly on those lines. And then once I think I have them lined up on top of each other, I just take a pencil and draw in those little lines there, and this is going to give me the perfect octagon shape that will create the base to my template that I can use to turn around in my stamping platforms. So there are lots of other ways to create these, and if you have a die cutting machine that is going to cut a shape big enough for this, and then you have the dies that are going to be big enough for this, then you don't have to take this step. But for people like me who don't have the machine nor the dies to do this, then this is a good option. You can just use your long bladed scissors to cut those edges nice and straight, or you can bring in your trimmer and just cut off those pieces. I'm just making sure it's lined up with the bottom part of my trimmer there. That way I know it's also straight, and once I cut off all 4 of these corners, then I have the perfect octagon shape that is going to create my jig. Now I know that there are tools out there that you can purchase that are going to do this as well, but for how often I am going to use these and I create my own wreaths, then I probably don't see the need to invest in a tool. If this is something that you make often, then perhaps you might like to, but this is just a DIY way to do it, and this is just a really quick way. When I decided I needed a circular wreath card, then this is how I do it. Now this is going to be my jig, and you don't have to do this part, but what I like to do so that I can get things really lined up well, particularly when I'm using quite a small circle in comparison to the jig that I have created there, is I like to just draw in all of these lines, and this just helps me know exactly where the center points are, exactly when things are lined up. As I said, this is not necessary, and I just find this helpful. And in fact, on a couple of my base plates, I actually put these like lines in big, thick, vivid, big black bold marker so that I can see them really easily. So you can stop there and do a couple, and that will give you the center point obviously, or you can keep going like I did and add in as many as you like. Now I'm going to take 2 circles, so I use the Hero Arts Infinity Circles die set. This is like one of the staples in my craft stash, is having the Infinity die sets. I really think that they are a good investment, in particular probably the rectangles and circles, ovals and squares, I would say, are probably some of my most used dies in my whole collection, and these are dies that are going to last you forever. So I think, in my opinion, that these are a really good investment, and I chose to invest in them, and I certainly don't regret it. So once I have all those lines in, I can make sure that things are really nicely lined up and in the center, because obviously I can't see through my little circles there. Now I chose to make a circular card today, but you could also just pop a wreath on the front of a square card or anything like that, but this just allows me to get that really nice gorgeous wreath shape in a bit of a DIY fashion. Now this is my favorite removable tape. This is the only one I use. I love this Tombow one, and I will of course leave links to everything down in the description box below this channel. When you use those links, I do get, on some of them, I get a really small commission, which helps me keep this channel running and kind of supports me. But if you choose to purchase them somewhere else, then I am a firm believer in getting a good deal for you. You might choose to shop really locally if you have the shops available. There are certainly, we don't have any shops, paper crafting shops or things Well, we do have a Spotlight and a Lincraft where I live. They are just general big box crafting stores. They're not paper crafting stores in particular, but they do have a small selection. Now I am going to pop this into my stamping platform, and on my stamping platform base I have a Sizzix sticky grid sheet. Now I think I have a video a little while back where I show you how exactly I pop those in, but it's exactly as it looks, and it has 2 double-sided adhesive sides to it, and then I also use some washi tape just around the edges, and this just keeps it kind of really in place nice and firmly. So I am going to apologize in advance because I'm actually going to use, this is one of my favorite stamp sets. This is from Paper Smooches, and this is the Botanicals stamp set, and these are, I can't bear to get rid of these. These are my absolute favorite, and I know that they are discontinued, but you just really, with a wreath, you can use anything. It doesn't have to be foliage. And you can really have a go with all sorts of inks, all sorts of stamps, and just have fun. So I have popped my circle right in the middle of my octagon, and then I have the octagon is going to be lined up against that line there, the 1-inch line on the sticky grid sheets, and then hard up against the lip on the left hand side of my stamping platform. And then once you have stamped, all you need to do is turn it clockwise or anti-clockwise, 1 turn, and then stamp down again, shift your grid again, stamp again, shift your grid again, and this ends up going really fast, especially once you kind of get into the swing of it, and you can just move it around and start creating your wreath really, really simply. Now I do like having the sticky grid sheets. I know that people also use sticky mats, but they are not always readily available depending on where you live, and given how tricky it can be to find some items at the moment. So these Sizzix sticky grid sheets, they come in a pack of 5, and I don't think I have had to replace any of the ones that I've used so far. They're lasting me a really long time, which is important because I don't love just throwaway products. So it's important that they last a good, decent amount of time. Now here is where I didn't think I wanted the full strength of this orange ink. So I put a little piece of paper in there just to catch it, and then I'm going to do a little bit of second generation stamping just to check and see what I thought. But actually, no, I was kind of putting this back here and I thought I liked the full strength, so it's all okay because I was using my stamping platform. Everything is lined up and I can just add the full strength ink and then pop it in place and then start turning again to make sure that I go around the wreath. Now you don't have to stamp, obviously this shape has 8 sides to it, so you're going to get 8 versions of the image around the outside. You could obviously create one that has 6 or anything that you want to, and you don't have to always stamp the 8. You could skip 1 or skip 2, it's up to you if you'd like it to be a little more organic. So I'm going to whip around. I'm using some VersaFine Clair inks for this. And one of the main reasons that I use these inks is because they are beautiful for stamping. The impression they give is second to none. They give a very, very crisp, clear impression when stamping. So I know I'm not going to have to do double stamping to kind of get a really nice smooth finish. Now the yellow is the Cheerful, the orange was Summertime, and the blue, which is actually kind of like a turquoisey blue, is Warm Breeze. This is a color that I recently got and I absolutely love this color. I am choosing to do second generation stamping of this one, and I'm also going to only do 4 little turns. I have 2 little flowers on here at the moment, so every time I turn my grid I'm actually turning it 2 clicks to the left rather than just 1, and that way I'm going to end up with 8 of those flowers altogether, but 4 around the outside and 4 on the inside. And then that is pretty much the end of my wreath. I think that looks busy enough, and I'm going to add a couple of little things to it from here. This is the Paper Rose Studio All the Thanks little stamp set. This is just a little mini one, and this is going to fit perfectly inside of my little card here. So I'm just going to stamp that out in some VersaFine Onyx Black ink, which is a nice pigment ink again, and it is going to stamp beautifully and crisp, which is what I need in the middle of this little wreath here. Now obviously I'm creating a circular card, and I'm going to show you actually at the end of this video how I create the envelopes for when I would send a card like this as well, because sometimes it can be those little things that kind of trip us up and might be a little bit of a roadblocker for us to create these kinds of cards. But honestly, it's very, very simple. I actually do have a video on my channel about how I create my own envelopes. However, if you have one that you have purchased or that has come with the set that you need to use up, then there is an easy way to do that and change that to work for these cards as well. But if you're creating a custom one, then obviously it's easy enough to make one the right size for your card as well. So I just have a little bit of yellow twine here, and I'm going to pop this. I just used 2 strands to pop together to create a gorgeous little bow. I'm a big fan of putting these little kind of delicate fine bows on my cards. It doesn't create too much bulk, probably no more than some of the gems that I have used, and I'm just going to pop this down on the front for just a little bit added texture and a little bit more of a visual element that can go down the bottom. Now this is how I'm going to create the back of my card. I'm taking my scoreboard, or this is my cutting board, but it has a scoring blade, and this doesn't matter, there is no rhyme or reason as to where you should do this, but this one ends up being 1/2 inch down, and that gives me the perfect amount that's going to secure the card and kind of close it, really give it enough to hold it together, and so that it can be opened and closed easily. So just reinforce that bend back and forward so that the card's going to open and close nicely. And then this is where I'm going to put some liquid glue. You can use double-sided tape, would probably be even better here. This was me cutting corners because obviously with liquid glue you don't want it to seep out and kind of be too much, because otherwise it might go where you don't want it to go in your card. But I was just running the risk here and you can see I just put on a very tiny amount of glue, and then I'm going to place these together so that they line up perfectly, and that will create the top of my card. Now these cards stand up just fine, just like any other card, but if you have particularly really heavy items and things on the front, then you might want to think about adding a little flat section to the bottom of your circular card, or another way to make sure that it stays upright. But this card in particular, because I'm not going to put anything too heavy on it at all, then it is going to stand up just fine, just like that as is. Even when I put the bow on, that's not going to make any difference at all. So it stands up just fine. Then again, I'm going to use the liquid glue to pop this on, and you do have to give this a minute to dry. I kind of just put a little glob there, and even if it smushes out the back or anything, I know that this glue is going to dry nice and clear and very matte, so it's not going to leave any shine or anything, and that's part of the reason why I love that glue. Now, I have an envelope here that I have been meaning to use up. It's one of those ones that floats around my desk, and I'm going to use it up because I think the blue goes nicely with the little flowers and it contrasts nicely with the yellows and oranges. So this is just a regular envelope, but it is kind of too big. My card would float around in there a little bit. So all I'm going to do is I just held it up against there. I didn't measure. I'm a big fan of just kind of eyeballing, and I'm going to cut off, I mean, it's about give or take 1/2 inch or so off each end of the envelope. And then obviously that is going to be the sides that we will need to refix. And so this is a very simple case of all you need to do is open up your envelope, add a thin strip of double-sided tape. You could also use liquid glue if that's all you have available, and just pop it, run it down each side of the envelope. Then once you close it back up, you have a custom sized envelope ready for your circular card. So no big deal. You don't have to worry too much if you don't have an envelope that fits perfectly, because usually there is a way to make it work so it looks like it was always meant to be. Now with this card, I did think at the very end that I may actually even just add a couple of bits and pieces to the envelope, a little bit of stamping, since I had everything out ready to go. I was a little bit hesitant here to put the card in the envelope because I had just glued on that wet bow, so I didn't want to move it around too much, but we gave it a go and it came out just fine. It had probably dried enough, and so it fits in the envelope really nicely. And then, as I said, just when I had the back of the envelope here, I thought, yeah, I'm here, why not? I'll go with it. So I'm going to add exactly the same foliage that I used for the card, and I'm just going to stamp it off once, so it's kind of a second generation, and pop those along the top of the back flap of the envelope. And then I'm going to take one of those little flowers that I used also for the card and just do that full strength in between, and it's just a little ending detail that kind of makes it look like the envelope matches the card and is a set together. But this is completely optional. So that was my card DIY wreath today, making your own, and I hope that you have enjoyed this video. Leave me a comment down below to let me know if you already have a wreath maker or if you might create your own. And other than that, I really look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks, bye!